that's going to help clear away many of the showers that we've seen through recent days. That being said, there will still be a few showers for some of us as we go overnight across some southern southeastern parts, maybe eastern parts of England as well, and also towards the far north of Scotland, a bit of cloud and some showery rain starting to edge in. Otherwise, a lot of dry weather, some clear skies, allowing temperatures to take a bit of a dip, a bit of a frosty start for some of us, though in the far southeast, a brisk wind will stop temperatures dropping especially low here, and also across the very far north of Scotland, Shetland and later into Orkney, we are going to see a zone of cloud and outbreaks of rain pushing in, so not turning as cold here overnight. But elsewhere across much of Scotland and into Northern Ireland and Northern England, a bright start but also a frosty one with temperatures sub-zero for many places. Slightly less chilly to start further south, but nonetheless a bit of frost is possible, and do watch out, there could be a few patches of fog or freezing fog in a few spots as well. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, and apart from one or two showers across some parts of England in particular, it's looking largely dry for most of us, some sunshine breaking through at times as well. Worth noting though, the cloud and outbreaks of rain across the far north of Scotland will edge a bit further southwards. Temperatures for many similar to today, maybe a degree or so higher, so feeling okay in the sunshine, but in the southeast there will be a nagging breeze. After another chilly night for many of us, Saturday into Sunday. Sunday does look like it would get off to a bright start towards the southwest, but cloud towards the north-northeast will eventually make its way southwards across many places, and there will be a few spots of rain mixed in with this as well. As we go through next week, it is going to start chilly, but temperatures should gradually rise as we go through the week. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We want to spruce up your spring with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash that you can spend however you like. But that's not all, as you'll also receive not one, but two brand new designer watches and a fabulous Mulberry handbag. For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christys Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christys Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 o'clock on a Friday night. It's Bev Turner in for Patrick Christys tonight, and I am joined by a wonderful studio audience. We will not let you down. Coming up tonight.
It will happen. We need that for international security, not just security, international.
If Donald Trump continues his plan to annex Greenland, even suggesting he might send in the troops, will we side with Europe, given that Greenland is part of Denmark, or will we side with Trump's America? Discuss. Plus, the Lake District almost nowhere sums up Englishness like the home of Wordsworth, Kendall Mintcake and Beatrix Potter. Well, it's got planning permission for its first mosque. It's not a small building, and they've just appealed for more money to keep the build going. But with 350 churches closing every year, what is the impact of this change on our national identity? And we're going to be heading live to Benidorm, where punters have chosen to travel and watch Cheltenham races on the TV there because it's cheaper than going here. Can you believe that? And given they've probably been celebrating or drowning their sorrows all day, anything could frankly happen. And a new housing estate in Scotland has names such as Vaccine Drive and Radiography Road. We're going to be talking to the Glasgow MSP who was part of the team who came up with these embarrassing street signs. And
they have literally killed masculinity in our homes and our communities. For one reason.
As one American movie star talks about the importance of raising men to be men, including protecting women. How have we gone wrong with a generation of young men, and how can we help them? And what on earth is going on here? That and a lot more with a fantastic panel this evening. Don't go anywhere. First, it's your news with Aaron.
Thanks, Bev. A very good evening to you. Our top stories. President Trump says the US has had good calls with both Russia and Ukraine today, but says it's not easy to agree a ceasefire deal. He also gave himself credit for bringing both sides to the negotiating table.
I want to get it stopped, and we've had some very good calls today with Russia and with Ukraine. They've agreed for a ceasefire if we can get it with Russia, and it's not easy. It's a tough one, but I think we're doing it.
Foreign ministers from the G7 nations, including Great Britain and the US, have backed Ukraine's territorial sovereignty and have warned Russia to accept a 30-day truce or face the threat of further sanctions. In a joint statement, they indicated Ukraine would need security guarantees to guard against future Russian aggression. The statements aimed at showing unity following weeks of tension between US allies and President Trump over trade, security and Ukraine. Foreign Secretary David Lammy says the ball is now in Vladimir Putin's court.
Now is the time for a ceasefire with no conditions. Ukraine has set their position out. It is now for Russia to accept it. I think that there is a coalition of the willing emerging to give Ukraine the security architecture and arrangements that they need.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky believes the US can apply enough pressure on Russia to end the war, but has warned that Vladimir Putin will try to endlessly prolong it. Putin has suggested ceasefire talks are beginning to move following a meeting with Donald Trump's top envoy in Moscow yesterday, and says he'll guarantee the safety of Ukrainian troops in Kursk if they surrender. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has spoken to the leaders of France and Norway ahead of a meeting of world leaders tomorrow to discuss sending international peacekeepers to Ukraine. At Downing Street, Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron discussed the significant breakthrough on peace talks. The Prime Minister will chair a virtual meeting of the so-called Coalition of the Willing. Russia has denounced plans to send international troops to Ukraine. Well, away from Ukraine, the UK economy shrunk by 0.1% in January in a blow to the government ahead of its spring statement. The Office for National Statistics says the unexpected drop in GDP was driven by a sharp fall in manufacturing, although retail sales were up. Forecasters had been expecting a slight increase. Business leaders say trade frictions are causing concern and uncertainty. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has said she is working to improve the economy. Former Met Police officer David Carrick's appeared at the Old Bailey accused of multiple sex attacks on a woman and a teenage girl. The 50-year-old has previously denied 2 counts of rape, 1 count of sexual assault and 1 count of coercive and controlling behaviour in relation to the woman between 2014 and 2019. He's also denied 5 counts of indecent assault on a girl under 16 between 1989 and 1990. Carrick has been remanded in custody until a further hearing in June. And Marcus Rashford and Jordan Henderson have been named in Thomas Tuchel's first England squad for the World Cup qualifiers later this month. Rashford's been rewarded for his good form on loan at Aston Villa for Manchester United. Tuchel's named players at the opposite ends of their careers, with the 35-year-old Henderson recalled. He last played for England in November 2023. There's a first call-up as well for the 32-year-old Newcastle defender Dan Burn in your picture now. And they'll play alongside Arsenal's 18-year-old Miles Lewis-Skelly. Harry Kane will continue as captain. And the newish manager, Thomas Tuchel, has described Henderson as a serial winner. He also said Burn's selection long overdue. That's it for the moment. More from me in an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
This is so exciting. It's normally just me and Andrew Pierce for 2.5 hours. So to have you lot here is just brilliant. I'm also joined this evening by Barry Gardiner, the wonderful, amazing Barry Gardiner. GB News superstar, former Tory MP from the last Conservative government, but we'll forgive you that, Miriam. I forgive you more and more every time I see you, Miriam Cates. Legend of the TV world. Christo is here with us, ladies and gentlemen. And a regular friend of Britain's newsroom, Matt Talbot, is with us as well this evening. Right, now I felt like I was in a dream when we're discussing this story today, but President Donald Trump appears to be dead set on seizing control of Greenland, which is currently under the control of Denmark. And yesterday, he even suggested involving NATO and sending in American troops. And this is what he said to NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte in the White House yesterday.
It'll happen. We need that for international security, not just security, international. We have a lot of our favorite players, cruising around the coast, and we have to be careful. We have a couple of bases on Greenland already, and we have quite a few soldiers, and maybe you'll see more and more soldiers go there. I don't know.
So Trump's argument is that annexing Greenland would protect the free world, which when you look at the location of this significant landmass, it isn't quite as bonkers as it sounds. So where exactly is Greenland? The biggest island mass in the world, and why is it so strategically important to him? Now, this might feel a little bit like your GCSE, maybe O-levels in some cases, geography lesson, but pay attention. It's situated between the Arctic Ocean and the North Atlantic, just off the northeast coast of Canada. And so it is officially part of the North American continent. It's 56,000 inhabitants. Half of them are Inuit and half of them speak Danish. Live on the 20%, which is not covered in ice and snow. We're really selling this as a holiday location, aren't we? It is crucial for marine life as a country and international trade. But, of course, Greenland is a veritable money pit of rare earth minerals that are key in the production of superconductors, electric motors and wind turbines. And just off the island sits an estimated 31 billion barrels of oil and natural gas, giving a golden opportunity to expand US mining and oil companies. However, Greenland's recent election results seems to show that voters were rejecting and are rejecting the idea of American ownership, as the majority leader declared Greenland wants to build our own country by ourselves. So, will Donald Trump continue his pursuit of the island, and how will it reset Europe? Barry?
Actually, you're right. Greenland is incredibly strategically important. And even more so because climate change has now opened up the northern passage over the top of Russia. What that means is that the trade route from the Far East, from China, can now come over the top and service the east coast of North America. And that is cutting journey times hugely. And of course, it's creating amazing international tension. If you look at what Russia's done on its northern coast, this is the first time it's ever felt unprotected on its north coast, because previously it was a block of ice that covered its north coast. They've put 50 new military bases along that northern coast. And in fact, the House of Lords did a very important report into that. And it was interesting that Mark Rutte, who was the guy speaking with Donald Trump, the executive secretary of NATO, tried to reroute Trump when Trump said, you know, well, maybe get NATO involved and get them into Greenland. And he said, oh, no, I don't know about that. But he then said, but actually, it is strategically important because of these trade routes and the way in which climate change is actually changing the whole development of the Northern Arctic. And one more important thing, he pointed out that the Arctic Council, which are all those countries that actually control the high north, is now 7-1 against Russia, 7 in NATO, and then Russia. And that's changed the balance of the Arctic Council, and the Arctic Council is no longer able to meet and function and take its decisions. And it's always acted by cooperation before it can't at the moment.
Miriam, who'd have thought that in March 2025, we'll be sitting on a Friday night and talking about the importance of Greenland for a country which has such significance? It's not a country that we've really spent a lot of time thinking about, talking about as a former MP. Is Trump just ahead of the game here, or is this a conversation that's been had amongst the corridors of power for a while?
It's certainly a conversation that's been had in North America for a very, very long time. I think I was looking at the history earlier today, and actually, when America bought Alaska from the Russians in the 19th century, they also tried to buy Greenland at the same time. Those talks didn't go anywhere. America invaded Greenland during the Second World War when Denmark was invaded by the Nazis, and they've had significant military bases there ever since. So it does sound a bit outlandish to our ears, but actually there is a long history of American involvement and defence on Greenland, and the people of Greenland welcome that. It's very important for their defence. This is a tiny country. They're never, ever going to be independent. They get a quarter of their funding directly from the Danish state. So it's not quite as outlandish as I think we've kind of come to believe it in the British press. But I do think it, as Barry said, is so strategically important. If Russia were to send missiles to America, they would come over Greenland. It's the obvious place to build a defence. And I don't think it's actually outlandish to think of NATO troops at some point being part of that kind of military defence. But, you know, as we've said, there has been a recent democratic election in Greenland. They want independence themselves rather than being dependent on Denmark. So there are kind of many, many different outcomes here. But if we've learned anything about Donald Trump, is he says things that sound crazy, and a few years later, suddenly everybody's saying them.
Christo, the fact that he is saying it, though, it plays into the idea, it plays into the hands, particularly of the media, who say, well, he's just crazy. He comes up with these ridiculous schemes. And also, it makes him sound expansionist when he's talking about troops going into Greenland.
I mean, I love the way he just throws these things around. Though, who knew there was a positive to climate change that journey times can be getting slower, a bit quicker. So therefore, you know, let's have more ice melting. We'll be able to get everywhere so much quicker. I think he should just do a deal. I mean, no one in Greenland is happy as it is, because they're not happy, as you've pointed out, being a part of Denmark and all of the funding and the subsidies they have to take from Denmark. They're not happy probably as well because they live in Greenland and it's freezing cold and they can't live on most of the country. Why doesn't he try and sell the idea of more American involvement with Greenland, more American defence, helping them? Because from what I understand, the minerals as well that are in Greenland, they're extremely difficult to actually get hold of. But obviously,
they must
Donald
be
Trump...
miles of ice.
Yes, and so, you know, get a hot kettle on them, you'll be fine. So I think that he should sell that idea. I think the problem is with Donald Trump is that he kind of scatterguns his words when, in actual fact, what he wants to do is get his hands on the minerals, sell it to the Greenland people that actually being a part of the US will be great for their prosperity, great for their wealth. They can get the minerals and oils up and actually make them want to do it rather than talk about invading, which is expansionist and slightly crazy.
Do you think he is ahead of the curve, as Miriam says, Matt? And what would Downing Street be making of these noises? What do you think Keir Starmer, he's got his head in his hands going, oh, which side am I going to sit on here? I've got... Europe is going to be siding with Denmark. We've got America I'm supposed to be cozying up to still. We feel like we're in the middle of so many of these debates at the moment.
I think you have your head in your hands
in number 10 a lot of the time when Donald Trump... No, not even in a political point, but the idea that you're just trying to get ahead of one thing and he'll create another 3 or 4 at the same time. He could be ahead of the curve. The cynic in me thinks it's a bit of a distraction because it's quite hard to sort of trash a $29 trillion economy, but Donald Trump's quite on the cusp of it at the moment, the way that he's been acting. Obviously, as Christos said, I think the minerals are there. He's got a very good friend that would benefit from a lot of minerals, hence the sort of Ukraine deal as well. That's
Elon Musk with his...
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's totally where this ends. And actually, I think I was quite disappointed in Mark Rutte. I know diplomacy is a hard thing sometimes, but as the Secretary-General of NATO to go, oh, you're talking about annexing a couple of NATO countries, I'm not going to get involved with that. That's sort of your job, mate.
Did you see what happened to Zelensky?
Yes. Well, quite. But I just think you're there to do a job. And if you're going to bend over backwards and say, oh, I'll keep that clip of you being nice to me for my family, what's the point in you being there?
No, because that is not the way to deal with Donald Trump. Donald Trump, to the outward world, you sort of softly, oh, my God, it's so lovely to be here. It's how I have to deal with Beverly, actually. Yeah. You know, I have to, I'm very, very happy to be here, otherwise she'll go mad at me. But, you have to make out that, you're really happy and everything's great and wonderful, and then perhaps a bit of soft diplomacy on the side. I think if he were to have shamed Donald Trump in front of everyone else, it would have gone horribly, horribly.
But, I mean, I think there's a lesson for us here, because if we were to sit back and say, oh, yeah, that's fine. I mean, Denmark aren't going to be exactly happy if there's trillions of dollars worth of reserves there, for America to just come along and say, oh, well, we'll have that. But what do we say about the Falkland Islands? Well, we're just as further away from the Falkland Islands than Denmark is from Greenland.
Given that was Trump's logic, partly.
Yeah.
Denmark's a long way from Greenland.
Yeah,
we're closer.
Yeah, Trump says, oh, it's a long way, we should take it. Well, actually, we know somebody else who's been saying that for a very long time in Argentina. So I think we've got to, and that's where international law actually comes into play.
Barry, thank you, panel. One of our guests in the studio audience is going to ask a quick question. Oscar, you're here from Mill Hill. I think you came in London today, didn't you? Right, go for it.
Trump knows what he's doing. He gives a country closer to Europe so he can have more American troops based closer to Europe. He thinks out the box when no lefty woke prime ministers across Europe would do, especially two-tier Keir. While Trump is America is America first, while two-tier Keir locks up people for hurty tweets.
Oh, thank you, Oscar. Lovely. Anybody agree with this? Reading his own words there. We didn't write that for him. I think that's right. Matt, what did you make of what Oscar said?
I take it you're not a fan of the Labour government, then? Is that safe to say? I think there's part of Donald Trump's protectionism I like, because I think for far too long, even going back to the 1980s and Margaret Thatcher, we've sold off a lot of our industry, and that's why we don't have an industry anymore. And he's obviously all about protecting America and America's jobs. I think part of that I like. I think the reason we have lots of cheap immigration coming into this country is because we've not trained our own people for a long time. I think on the hurty tweets line, what I would say is, there is definitely a difference between freedom of speech, which I'm a passionate believer in. I think you're totally entitled to say whatever you want to me, and it's up to me how I wish to take it. But there is a subtle difference between that and potential incitement and hatred, and that's where I think people have crossed the line.
Mike Amesbury can batter a constituent and not go to... Mike Amesbury can go to batter a constituent but doesn't go to prison. I think that is a disgrace.
Yeah, no, and at the time, listen, I'm no judge, but at the time I thought, from an optics point of view, he probably should have got the 2 years suspended. I think, I think you can't go around doing things like that. He's previously of good character. The judge will bear that in mind. And I think you have to ask questions of not just Mike, but other people, as someone that campaigns on prison reform. What lesson are they going to learn from prison? His life's over, right? It doesn't matter whether he goes or he doesn't. His life's over. Everyone knows who he is. He's that MP that battered his constituent. Why would you ever hire him? So what lesson is he going to learn at 50 grand a year per prisoner that we're going to pay at taxpayers' expense? I think you could give him a community sentence, and what I would have preferred is some sort of restorative justice where you bring him face-to-face with the bloke he's battered to learn how the impact it's had on that bloke and why he should absolutely not be doing that again, intoxicated or not.
But imagine if a Reform MP did that, there'd be a different sentence.
No, I don't think it works.
It would
like that.
100%
I think the
be a
judiciary
different
is independent
sentence.
in this country from the politics, and that's the way I would
People
always
throw
want it to
milkshakes
stay.
on Jeremy Corbyn, they get away with it, but when it's Farage, they don't even go to prison either.
Very
it's a
quickly.
suspended sentence.
So this isn't the Matthew and Oscar show, but Jeremy Corbyn did get assaulted with an egg, and the bloke did go to prison. That's right. And actually, if Farage was put in danger, he should also be.
Sorry, just
No, go on.
And with the Axel Ruder Cabana, if he didn't, it's a risk with the riots. He should have put it out earlier about his links to Al Qaeda with the ricin. That was a big mistake. What do you think about that with Keir Starmer?
I think there was a lot of mistakes in that about Starmer.
Yeah.
I don't know his reasons for sitting on it. I've not spoken to Keir Starmer about that. I don't know what he's thought about that. I believe the idea was that he didn't want to cause further tensions. Whether he's called that wrong, I don't know.
And also, just to correct it, the Rada Cabana attack actually was deemed not a terrorist offence in the end. I'm so glad you got that wrong, because otherwise I thought I might be swapping places with you and you'd be up here and I'd be going to put the kettle on, ladies and gentlemen. But Oscar, thank you so much. We've still got a lot to come this evening. We're going to be looking at the scenic beauty of the Lake District. Would it be affected? Will it be affected when their first mosque is completed? They're asking for more money at the moment to finish it. And we're going to cross live to Benidorm, where people have gone to watch the races because it's cheaper to go to Spain than it is to watch them here. You couldn't make it up. Don't go anywhere.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Angela, what were the benefits you saw working on Strictly? What actually was this revelation to you that you should do more?
Well, I tell you what it was, mainly. It was because I think I've been dancing since I was 5, one way and another. Yes. And I'm now 80, so 75 years I've been dancing. So I've always known, as have dance teachers all over the country, that dance is actually the best form of exercise you can possibly do, because it's not just good for your body, but it's also great for your mind, for your mental health, for your mind, for your happiness, for your outlook on life. And of course, you have to use your brain to remember what you're doing. So it's great for all sorts of things. And so I've known that, and dance teachers have known that, but it's always been sort of under the radar when people have thought about how do I get fit. They sort of think automatically about going to a gym or doing a park run, treadmill, doing all of that. So when I was doing Strictly, I got wonderful reaction from the public. I mean, I was just overwhelmed with a lot of people saying that I'd inspired them to think about dance. And I thought, how can I put these two things together then? And I was listening to Chris Whitty on radio, he's the Chief Medical Officer for England, saying that because the National Health Service is having such financial difficulties, it would help if we all took more responsibility for our own health by, he said, play football, go to a gym. Why not dance, he said. And I thought, that's what I can do. So because I've been involved with dance for a long time, I got in touch with every one of the dance organisations in the country, the ones who look after ballroom dancing, Latin, ballet, street dance, everything, all of them, and all the ballet companies, all the dance companies, and said, if we can get a national day of dance to get that message across, get dance teachers to open their doors and say, come and see what dance can do for you.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News. Studio audience and a wonderful panel as well. It's quite hot in here already. Now, we're going to go to Benidorm to speak to our reporter, Doogie Beattie. Doogie, just explain this to me. I think they've pressed the wrong button. There he is, Doogie Beattie. Right, Doogie, you are in Benidorm. And again, in the meeting, it was one of those surreal moments of the day. We're going to see Doogie Beattie because of the Cheltenham races. I said, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Why are you there?
Well, Bev, welcome to Benidorm. And yeah, we're here because it was cheaper to go to Benidorm than it was to go to Cheltenham races. So what has happened is thousands of Brits have came to Benidorm. They've watched the horse racing on the big screens. They have been betting, drinking all day long. And some of them got here for £250 return, half board. So why would you not, when some... to get to Cheltenham is nearly £1,000. By the time you get there, pay your drink at £7.50 a pint. Here, it was €19 for a bucket of 10. And there's some of the boys still out and about. Where are you from, sir?
I'm from Nottinghamshire.
Yeah, and what are you doing here today?
Oh, Cheltenham's so expensive. We're here in Benidorm to live it up.
And when did you arrive?
Tuesday. So when we was on the plane, Constitution Hill was falling, and we lost so much money when we was on the plane.
And when are you going home?
We're going home Sunday.
Sunday.
Hey,
I'm from Cardiff.
He's from
South Wales.
It's Cardiff.
That's all down.
Cardiff. Nottingham. I mean, where else would you get? I mean, just Lucia, turn around there and you can see the strip in full party mode. Everybody in Cheltenham's gone home. And yeah, they're still partying like you've never seen here. And all for the knockdown price of about 250 quid. There'll be a lot of sore heads. There'll be a lot of painkillers sold in the morning. But right now, these Brits are out to party and they're having a really good time.
Now, Doogie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like a predominantly male crowd there for this event. Any women at all? No.
Oh no, there is quite a few women here, and I can assure you they are much more badly behaved than the men. Bev, I have always said it, there is nothing makes a wee boy out of you quicker than a room full of women. It's terrible.
Oh, it looks like money well spent, Doogie. Thank you so much for joining us. Women, horses, booze. Give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Heading back here. Barry Gardner's luckily still here. Miriam Cates is still here. Christo Fukas is still here. And Matthew Torbett is still here as well. Right, if I take my seat. Now, we are going to be talking about the fact that the Lake District... Who's been to the Lake District here? Put your hands up. Or pretty much every... Christo?
I've never been to the Lake District. I'm sorry. I got all right. I don't want any trouble. I didn't know.
You've never been to the Lake District?
No, I've never been to the Lake District.
Oh, you're missing out, because it is literally the epitome of English cultural heritage and identity, isn't it? Beatrix Potter, William Wordsworth. And now South Lakes Islamic Centre has made a fresh appeal for funds to ensure construction continues to build the first mosque in the area. Have a listen.
Alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuhu. Ramadan Kareem from the beautiful Lake District in the northwest of England, a place of exceptional natural beauty and a place that I'm proud to call home. I'm standing at the site of the first masjid in the Lake District. Muslims have actually lived and worked in this area for over 40 years, but we still have no masjid, no madrasa, and no janaza facilities in a 50-mile radius. This piece of land was actually acquired during COVID times, and after some initial hurdles and setbacks, work is finally underway, as you can see. But what you see here could change without your help. We only have enough funds to last us till April, otherwise the construction work will stop. I'm reaching out to you in a moment of critical need, for our children, for my brothers and sisters, and for the Muslim reverts joining our community. Please embrace this cause. Please make dua. Please help me spread the word. And please donate generously. This work must not stop.
So they're looking for £2.5 million to reach their goal, and the mosque was granted full planning permission in December 2020. Miriam, as a Christian, and we talk all the time about the lack of Christianity. I did a story last night about 3,500 churches closing in the last 10 years. You can't knock the Islamic community for trying.
No, absolutely. And, you know, they want a place of worship. What person of faith can't understand that? I think it's easy to kind of say, oh, my goodness, do we really want a mosque in the heart of the Lake District? But we've got a choice. You can either have freedom of religion or you can have cultural homogeneity. You know, you can't have both. And we do have a strong tradition of freedom of religion in this country. And that tradition actually comes from the way that we settled the battles between Protestants and Catholics hundreds of years ago. But, of course, those two are just different versions of the same faith, the same culture. And so you can have freedom of religion when everybody basically has the same theology and the same culture. Can you have freedom of religion when those religions are so different and the culture that comes from it is so different? It's a very good question. But if we do believe in freedom of religion, then absolutely there is no reason why Muslim people can't build a mosque subject to planning permission and all the other laws that all other buildings would require. But, you know, there is a question here about what is our national religion? And I think there are only about 4 million practising Christians in this country. And I think for
Muslims.
No, there are only 4 million practising Christians in this country. There are many more people who say they're culturally Christian, but being culturally Christian and not going to church is one of the reasons why all those churches have closed down. So if you're not bothered about churches closing down, that's fine, but you then also can't complain about mosques being built.
So my understanding is the latest figures, there are 4 million practising Muslims in this country now as well, which increased by 44% between 2011 and 2021. Barry Gardner, do you understand people's concerns about that cultural shift happening very quickly in a short period of time?
Well, look, you're talking about an area of the country in which a vast majority of the population, almost, you know, about 50% of the population in the towns around there are Muslim people of Muslim background, Muslim faith. And I think Miriam spoke very well about it. I think we totally agree. I am a practicing Christian, but I'd far rather see people of faith having somewhere to practice their faith, and as Miriam says, subject to all the planning regulations, that's great. You know, the Lake District is a big place. The idea that British culture is going to fall if a mosque is built in the Lake District. I mean, actually, in my own patch, in my constituency in northwest London, we have an old, I think it was an old Methodist or Baptist church, which is now being converted into a mosque. So some of those church buildings can actually be converted in that way. They've chosen to build their own. Good luck to them, and well done to GBNews for boosting their appeal.
Tony, I think you wanted to say something.
A mosque is to be built in the Lake District. An organisation appeals for donations to complete the project.
That's right. Did you have a question?
I think Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves should dip in their funds and help them out.
Well, I think the point you're probably making is the fact that Labour have to be very mindful of the Muslim votes. Christo?
I think that the reason that people have concerns about this, and this might not be a popular thing to say. Well, first, I think the building isn't very nice looking. I have to say that from the point of view of not having been to the Lake District. I understand it's quite green, but I think there are many negative traits that are associated with the Islamic faith. Now, that is not to say that every single person of the Islamic faith might feel that way, but it is true to say that there are many people who have an extreme view of Islam that are on the terror watch list. We've seen things like the grooming gangs. We've seen other aspects of what people would call two-tier justice. So I think people get concerned because they think, well, more mosques means more Islam and more of the state not doing what it should when it comes to the parts of that religion that make people concerned. Now, again, I'm going to say it. I think it's really important to point out that it's a failure of people who are Islamic that don't subscribe to some of those awful things, that those things aren't done, and it's a failure not to say that not everyone thinks that way. But that's why people are concerned. So this is a failure of the state, actually.
Yeah. OK, all right, thank you all. We've got to move on. A new housing estate in Glasgow, which is being built on the site of a former hospital, using street names such as Vaccine Avenue and Radiography Road. But would you be happy if one of those was your address? Don't go anywhere, lots more to come.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Welcome to the Winter Sun Outlook, and if you are looking for some summer-like warmth, the place to be is Greece, where a spring heatwave will bring temperatures widely into the low to mid-20s, perhaps in some spots up to the high 20s, so remarkably warm air drifting out of North Africa, but at the same time, northern parts of Italy, across the Balearics as well, a lot of unsettled weather, further showers driving into Portugal, a respite into the weekend, but more unsettled weather here next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, parents across the country who had suffered a miscarriage will now be granted the right to bereavement leave. It's hard to believe that wasn't part of the law before. Well, it's now part of Labour's reforms on workers' rights.
Well, the change will benefit those who lose a pregnancy before 24 weeks.
Well, it's a victory for Keely Langthorne. She's the woman who's led the campaign for the law to be changed. And finally, it has. And Keely is with us now. She's the founder of George's Law and a partner, she's a lawyer as well, at RWK Goodman. And she herself has suffered 3 miscarriages. Keely joins us now. And Keely, it is so good to see you. Victory at last.
Victory at last. We've come a long way here, Lee.
Yeah. And we've spoken over the years so many times, haven't we? You've been campaigning for years for this under George's Law.
Yeah.
And it happened on George's birthday this week.
It did. So, yeah, it all started back in 22, shortly after I lost George. Obviously met you shortly after, started the campaign, and yeah, Monday evening we'll go down in history, George's 3rd birthday, and being told that, yeah, it's going to finally be law.
So what will happen now? How much leave will women be able to have?
So now it will even mirror that if you lose a baby after 24 weeks. So in its current stance, the law says if you lose a baby over 24 weeks, you get 2 weeks paid leave. So the same will now apply if you lose a baby under 24 weeks, so from 0 to 24.
It is unbelievable that the way that the law stood was that you could potentially have lost a baby at, let's say, 8 p.m, and you would be expected to be in the office at 9 a.m. the next morning.
Yeah, and if you think I had a 12-hour labour with George, I bathed him, I left him at the mortuary, but the law says that I should be, as a lawyer, back in work time according the next day.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
tonight. My panel are here, my audience are here. No, Patrick, I'm afraid you're stuck with me. He's on his holidays. Now, would you live on Radiography Road, a new housing estate in Glasgow, which is being built on the site of a former hospital, which treated patients with infectious diseases like scarlet fever, tuberculosis and smallpox until its closure in 1998. Has got all the streets around it named crazy, extraordinary things. The spokesman for Glasgow City Council said that naming conventions for Glasgow streets have been in place since the late 1980s, basing them around the history of the site in question. But before I go to my panel to talk about this, let's first go down the pub with Adam Brooks and get his thoughts. Good evening, Adam.
Good to see you there.
Adam, would you like to live on Vaccine Drive?
No, I can't believe this. I don't know anyone that would want to live in Vaccine Drive or Radiography Road. I think it devalues a property, in my opinion. Surely there's some lovely, like Glasgow heritage that they could celebrate instead of this. It's not very. It's not really sexy, is it, to live in Vaccine Road there?
It could be worse.
I don't know.
Like colonoscopy cul-de-sac, maybe. Smear test street, I don't know. Vasectomy Vale. I've got more of these, don't worry.
Syphilis Street. We don't want that either.
And listen, I want to ask you as well tonight, what are people talking about in the pub tonight, Adam, on a Friday night, especially after a week of the reform storm that we've all been recoiling from?
I can't really repeat half of what gets said in here, to be honest, Bev. But yeah, look, the reform pantomime has been mentioned a few times. There's a lot of very disappointed people about. You know, a lot of people see reform as the saviour to save the right. You know, they're sick of the Tories, don't trust the Tories anymore. Labour are just too far left and, you know, crazy at times. So everyone sees reform as the saviour, and at the moment there's a lot of doubt. But I think Nigel Farage can be quite confident in the polls this week. They haven't been hit too hard by this. And let's remember, not everyone is on X or on social media. So I think the damage has been limited, to be fair.
I think so, and the polls are demonstrating that. And we had a poll, a GBNews Jail Partners poll, that showed that 86% of people had no idea who Rupert Lowe actually was anyway. So it probably isn't going to be much lasting damage for the party.
I'm a big fan of Rupert and I'm a big fan of Nigel, so it's quite a hard one to sort of watch unfold. But let's hope they can work it out and not too much damage has been done.
Yeah. All right, Adam, we'll catch up with you in the next hour. We'll let you go back and pull a few pints. It's so nice to see you. Bye, mate. Now, I'm still joined in the studio by former Conservative MP Miriam Cates, Labour MP for Brent West Barry Gardner, former Labour advisor Matthew Torbett and broadcaster Christo Fufas. I think we're going to talk about these street names, Christo.
Well, I hate to think of my house price if I happen to be living on AIDS Avenue or Dysentery Drive, frankly. Yeah, I mean, this is just, like, dreadful. I don't know why you'd want to name your road or name a street after those things. I mean, why would you want to be named after a disease? Or
well, let's find out, because one of the men responsible for these names joins us now, MSP Paul Sweeney. Paul, I have to say, good on you for joining us tonight. Did you know that we were going to give you such a hard time?
Well, it's certainly provoked some discussion, and the purpose, actually, of the naming of the streets was to recognise the significant medical pioneers that worked at that hospital over 100 years and often contributed to medical innovations that reduced the fact that we, no longer have infectious diseases so widespread in our population. So my original idea was actually to try and save the buildings and the amazing architecture of the hospital. Unfortunately, it was demolished despite my efforts. So when the new housing estate was being built, the idea turned to how to name those streets. My original idea was actually to name the streets after the medical pioneers and the researchers that worked at the hospital. But unfortunately, the Glasgow City Council came back and said that after recent controversies with naming conventions, after people who have turned out to be controversial, they no longer name streets after people alive or dead. So I have to go back.
Hang on. I can't let that go that easily, Paul. Right, so they wouldn't name it after maybe a scientist who of renown and success, in case at some point somebody said, oh, that scientist was a historic sex offender, and then you'd have to change the name of the street. Are you serious?
Well, apparently that's the policy in the council, and who am I to challenge councillors and council officers? So I had to go back and scratch my head and think of a more indirect way of paying tribute
Our
And
audience,
I agree,
Paul,
maybe,
have their heads in their hands. I wish you could see our audience. Everyone has their heads in their hands, because that's about what? It's about a kind of a fear of something unknown that might be around the corner. Where's everyone's backbone gone, Paul?
Yeah, and I think actually it's quite interesting because a housing estate built just a couple of years before actually was named after the architect of the hospital, Alexander MacDonald. So clearly it's not a consistently applied policy. I did try and push back a little on it, highlighting that, public health officials who worked at the hospital over the years, there was a number of really notable pioneers. If you look at someone like Dr. John Brownlee, he was one of the UK's top epidemiologists and was involved in pioneering public health interventions in the early 20th century. I mean, it's probably quite a safe bet to name some streets after him. And in fact, there's a medical centre in Glasgow already named after him. So it seems like a safe bet, but unfortunately, we weren't going to go for it.
So did you go back to the committee then and say, you know what, stuff them. We're going to come up with some stupid names just to prove what idiots they are down at the council. So we're going to come up with Laboratory Place. You could have done better than that, Paul.
Well, to be honest, I was really scratching my head, and maybe I could have come up with better ones. I did actually suggest X-Ray Road, but then they came back and said that we don't allow hyphens and street names. Partly the Royal Mail
Hyphens have been cancelled.
So then I had to substitute it for Radiography Road. So that's why we ended up with Radiography Road.
They're just so clunky. They're just so clunky. They lack complete sophistication. They've got no sophistication whatsoever. Virology Grove, Radiography Road. I mean, what do the residents say? Are they embarrassed when people say, where do you live? Vaccine Drive.
Well, I think people are happy to have good quality housing in the area, but also it's provoked intrigue, it's provoked curiosity about the history of the site, and given there's so little physical evidence of the original hospital left, at least thousands of people now know about this really important social history that might otherwise not. So maybe sometimes having quirky, somewhat provocative names will elicit interest.
Well, they're not provocative, they're stupid, Paul. We pointed out they're not provocative, they're just stupid. But you, my friend, are a good sport. I can't knock you for coming on here tonight, honestly. Can we give him a round of applause? Speechless. The fact that, Miriam, you can't name it after a person in case some skeletons come out of that person's cupboard.
I mean, it is part of this whole cancel culture, this idea that there are good people and there are bad people. And the minute you're found out to have done something that was completely culturally appropriate at the time, but now is looked upon badly, you are cancelled. I mean, it's just crazy, because human nature isn't like that. Yeah. People do amazing things, heroic things, but of course, they also sometimes do immoral and bad things in their private life. I mean, look at Nelson, amazing hero of history. He treated his wife appallingly.
Listen,
but does that mean we should take this?
I know we all want to talk about this, don't we? But
yes,
we do have to take a very quick wait. Hold that thought, Barry Gardner. Our Hollywood doctor is convinced that males need to embrace their masculinity. We're going to be talking about that in just a minute. Quick break, don't go anywhere.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Lots of fine weather to come as we go into this weekend, but it is still going to be chilly with some frosty nights as well. The reason why we're going to have a lot of fine weather is because high pressure is building from the west, and it's this that's going to help clear away many of the showers that we've seen through recent days. That being said, there will still be a few showers for some of us as we go overnight across some southern southeastern parts, maybe eastern parts of England as well, and also towards the far north of Scotland, a bit of cloud and some showery rain starting to edge in. Otherwise, a lot of dry weather, some clear skies, allowing temperatures to take a bit of a dip, a bit of a frosty start for some of us, though in the far southeast, a brisk wind will stop temperatures dropping especially low here, and also across the very far north of Scotland, Shetland and later into Orkney, we are going to see a zone of cloud and outbreaks of rain pushing in, so not turning as cold here overnight, but elsewhere across much of Scotland and into Northern Ireland and Northern England, a bright start, but also a frosty one with temperatures sub-zero for many places. Slightly less chilly to start further south, but nonetheless a bit of frost is possible, and do watch out, there could be a few patches of fog or freezing fog in a few spots as well. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, and apart from one or two showers across some parts of England in particular, it's looking largely dry for most of us, some sunshine breaking through at times as well. Worth noting though, the cloud and outbreaks of rain across the far north of Scotland will edge a bit further southwards. Temperatures for many similar to today, maybe a degree or so higher, so feeling okay in the sunshine, but in the southeast there will be a nagging breeze. After another chilly night for many of us, Saturday into Sunday. Sunday does look like it would get off to a bright start towards the southwest, but cloud towards the north-northeast will eventually make its way southwards across many places, and there will be a few spots of rain mixed in with this as well. As we go through next week, it is going to start chilly, but temperatures should gradually rise as we go through the week. Bye-bye.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This housing estate in Scotland, which has these incredible street names because it used to be where a hospital stood. I think one of our audience has got a question. Eleanor, you wanted to comment on that?
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to live in Vaccine Drive or Vaccine cul-de-sac or whatever. I was brought up in Scotland and I was educated when Scottish education was the best in Britain, if not in Europe. What worries me about this is, it would be better if they could name it after things like streptococcus and things like that. The only problem is...
No one could spell it.
Well, the only problem is that because Scotland has had SNP in power for how many years, the Scottish education system is so bad, nobody'd be able to spell them.
Yes, you're right, Eleanor, absolutely. And somebody did say, would you have a neatly trimmed bush on Gynecology Avenue? Thank you for that. Cheeky man at the back. Now, moving on, actor Anthony Mackie, who has become a Hollywood superstar, revealed in a podcast this week that he raises his young boys to become men because he says he believes in a society where masculinity should be nurtured, but instead it's being hampered. This is what he said.
Past 20 years, we've been living through the death of the American male. They have literally killed masculinity in our homes and our communities, for one reason or another. But I raised my boys to be young men. And however you feel about that, you feel about that. Right. But my boys will always be respectful. They will always say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. No, sir, no, ma'am. They will always say thank you. They will always open a door for a lady. They will always make sure that their mother is taken care and provided for. They will always be men.
Now, that should not be controversial, but of course it is. Christo Fucus is a man who has been sharing a powder with me this evening.
We should say it's makeup.
Talking about a makeup bag. Thank you, Christo, for that clarification. What does masculinity look like in 2025?
Do you know, I would not be, without my makeup bag, this is, quite seriously, I would not be a young, straight male in this society for love nor money, because I think that there are so many mixed messages now that come from, I think, their peers, that come from women, that come from society. You know, you've got to be strong and put your arms around the woman to make sure that you're looking after them. But no. But you've also got to be really, really in touch with your feelings. But hang on, not too in touch with your feelings, because then you're a bit of a wimp. But so you've got to be, again, a bit more masculine, but not too masculine, because that's toxic. Yeah. You know, no one was talking about conscription, though, when we were talking about that in the last couple of weeks, for young women. Now, we have moved, I think, in society where equality for women, which I think is a brilliant thing, has come at, like actually trying to fight racism, like trying to fight homophobia, trying to make men feel bad. You don't make less racism by telling white people they're terrible. You don't make less sexism by telling men that they're bad. And these mixed signals, on a really serious note, are manifesting into the highest suicide rate in young men that you could possibly have. So it's so dangerous where we're heading with this.
Matthew, as a young, straight, white man, what is it like in 2025?
I don't know, because I think masculinity is a different bag. You know, is Christo any less masculine than me because he wears makeup?
Well,
I would say probably a little.
But I think it depends on your...
the traditional stereotype of a masculine
Put it this way,
man.
I don't feel under attack. Now, I might be an anomaly in that, and I'm someone that, you know, at school would be considered a little bit more camp than others because I like things like football, but also drama. And therefore I was a little bit different, and people in society don't always like differences. That doesn't mean that because I was 6'3", I couldn't handle myself outside in the playground if needs be. So does that make me more masculine? And I think part of it is listening to people. I don't think that's controversial, what was said.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a difference. He's a role model to his children, and that's what a lot of our young men don't currently have, unfortunately. And I think because of that, you turn towards the more toxic elements of masculinity, where he's saying be respectful to the women and to your mum and make sure they're looked after. You have the Andrew Tates of the world that feel like women shouldn't be respected. And I think women's suffrage is a good thing, but I suppose there is the other thing of you've won the battle almost, and it's almost like you're trying to win even more when you're there almost. You're there, you don't need to.
We need to move on. I'm so sorry. Just still to come, though, a couple were fined £1,500 for discovering a migrant in their...
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Lots of fine weather to come as we go into this weekend, but it is still going to be chilly with some frosty nights as well. The reason why we're going to have a lot of fine weather is because high pressure is building from the west, and it's this that's going to help clear away many of the showers that we've seen through recent days. That being said, there will still be a few showers for some of us as we go overnight across some southern southeastern parts, maybe eastern parts of England as well, and also towards the far north of Scotland, a bit of cloud and some showery rain starting to edge in. Otherwise, a lot of dry weather, some clear skies, allowing temperatures to take a bit of a dip, a bit of a frosty start for some of us, though in the far southeast, a brisk wind will stop temperatures dropping especially low here. And also across the very far north of Scotland, Shetland and later into Orkney, we are going to see a zone of cloud and outbreaks of rain pushing in, so not turning as cold here overnight. But elsewhere across much of Scotland and into Northern Ireland and Northern England, a bright start, but also a frosty one with temperatures sub-zero for many places. Slightly less chilly to start further south, but nonetheless a bit of frost is possible. And do watch out, there could be a few patches of fog or freezing fog in a few spots as well. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, and apart from one or two showers across some parts of England in particular, it's looking largely dry for most of us. Some sunshine breaking through at times as well. Worth noting though, the cloud and outbreaks of rain across the far north of Scotland will edge a bit further southwards. Temperatures for many similar to today, maybe a degree or so higher, so feeling okay in the sunshine, but in the southeast there will be a nagging breeze. After another chilly night for many of us, Saturday into Sunday. Sunday does look like it would get off to a bright start towards the southwest, but cloud towards the north-northeast will eventually make its way southwards across many places, and there will be a few spots of rain mixed in with this as well. As we go through next week, it is going to start chilly, but temperatures should gradually rise as we go through the week. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but two sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound? For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On a Friday. It's fun, this. It's Bev in for Patrick while he's out skiing with Emily. So I'm joined this evening by my lovely audience in the studio. They've travelled from all over the country. We will not let you down. Give yourselves another round of applause. And tonight, still to come, a group of Reform UK branch officers have written a letter of mass resignation this evening to party chairman Zia Youssef. We're going to be speaking to one of them live to find out why. And also, millions of people up and down the country have been watching Cheltenham this week, but how about placing a bet from Benidorm? We're going to be heading right back there, where punters have chosen to travel to Spain. It was a little bit risky last time, so anything could happen. There's been a lot of daytime drinking. And what on earth is going on here? A warning, the gestures on this screen might be offensive to you. Yeah, that's not the strangest thing tonight, though. First, your news with Aaron.
Thanks, Bev. Very good evening to you. Our top stories. President Trump has alluded to a breakthrough in ceasefire talks between Russia and Ukraine during a speech at the US Department of Justice. It comes as the G7 nations voiced unwavering support for Ukraine and warned Russia to accept a 30-day ceasefire or face the threat of further sanctions. They indicated Ukraine would need security guarantees to guard against future Russian aggression in a joint statement on the final day of their meeting in Canada. The US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, says they're close to a deal, but more work needs to be done.
I think there is reason to be cautiously optimistic, but by the same token, we continue to recognize this is a difficult and complex situation. It will not be easy, it will not be simple. But we certainly feel like we're at least some steps closer to ending this war and bringing peace, but it's still a long journey. It's a journey of many steps. But this is positive momentum. Obviously, we'll see what Russia and others are willing to do. It's not just Russia. Obviously, it has to be things acceptable to Ukraine.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky believes the US can apply enough pressure on Russia to end the war, but has warned that Vladimir Putin will try to endlessly prolong it. Well, President Putin says Ukrainian troops must surrender in response to Donald Trump's pleas to spare forces in the Kursk region. Ukraine, though, has said they are not surrounded. Putin has also sounded cautious optimism about a ceasefire deal. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has spoken to the leaders of France and Norway ahead of a meeting of world leaders to discuss sending international peacekeepers to Ukraine. Downing Street says Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron discussed the significant breakthrough on peace talks, and the Prime Minister will chair a virtual meeting of the so-called Coalition of the Willing tomorrow. Russia's denounced plans to send peacekeeping forces to Ukraine. The Russian captain of the container ship which crashed into a US oil tanker in the North Sea on Monday has been charged over the death of a crew member. Vladimir Mutin will appear at Hull Magistrates Court on Saturday, charged with gross negligence manslaughter. The two ships crashed off the East Yorkshire coast on Monday morning. Filipino national Mark Angelo Pernia has been named as the crew member of the Portuguese vessel, who is missing and presumed dead. Finally, a thief who murdered an Amazon delivery driver who was trying to stop him stealing his van has been jailed for life. The court heard that Claudio Carol Condor was delivering parcels in Leeds last year when the 32-year-old Mark Ross, described as a career criminal, climbed into his van and drove away. Well, Ross has been sentenced to a minimum term of 30 years. Those are your headlines. I'll be back with more in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Who are here tonight, and also my panel, Barry Gardiner, Miriam Cates, Christys and Matt. We're going to go on to this reform story. I know I'm sure a lot of you in the audience feel quite strongly about this, but we want some more medically inspired street names. Barry, you've got a few up your sleeve.
Well, it's not up my sleeve. Enema Passage, Catheter Alley, Biopsy Boulevard, Stool Street, Colonoscopy Corner, and Endoscopy Avenue.
You moonlight on Glasgow City Council with your part-time. Is that where you've come from?
You think it's all right, though, this cancel culture, Barry, don't you? That you might be careful about putting somebody's name to a street.
No, look, that I think is ridiculous. We do have to understand that they were different times and there were different values in those times. So I think, saying that nobody wants Crippen up there or, mass murderers street named after them, but people who have made serious medical discoveries, Fleming, what do and I'm not saying that there was anything wrong with Fleming that we don't know about. I'm just saying, all those great medical surgeons, inventors, name them after them. They deserve it. Name them after the nurses. Name them after the orderlies, the porters, the people who did, who did the really shitty work. Am I allowed to say that? Sorry.
Don't get that on Britain's Newsroom at 9 o'clock.
We're on Square Street now.
Right, okay. well, you and your powder, eh? But, no, I just think there are people who made that place why it was respected as a hospital, and it would be really good to honour them.
I think everyone on Vaccine Street is on jab seekers' allowance.
Oh, terrible.
Thank you, Miriam. She really did. I think somebody in our audience had a question about this, did they? Or wanted to comment on that? No? No, they haven't. OK. That's absolutely fine. Miriam, I also want to know from you your thoughts on that last story just before the break about that movie star, Anthony Mackie, talking about how you make boys boys, because you feel really strongly about this, don't you?
Yes, and we've just done a report with the Centre for Social Justice called Lost Boys, all about this, all about how so many young boys are now really hopeless.
So that's the Centre for Social Justice study, isn't it, the CSJ?
Yes, we've just, yes, and both Matthew and Christys have already alluded to some of the figures in there, terrible suicide rates, fatherlessness, 2.5 million children in Britain now growing up without a father figure. And I do think that equality, if you like, has gone too far. And just today, on the show I was presenting earlier, we were celebrating the contribution of women to in wartime. And, fair enough, women did contribute. But people were saying things like, we're celebrating the unique skills that women can bring to warfare. And you just think, well, why not celebrate men? Let's be honest, it's men that fight wars. Are we not able to say anymore what's uniquely special about being a boy? And I think the answer is no, we're not. We're not able to say those things, but we can reel off a whole load of things, feminine traits. Why can't we reel off masculine traits that we can celebrate?
We've got a question from our audience, I think, on this one. Do we?
From me, actually.
Hello, my love.
Exactly what you were saying. It was the loss of a father figure in the family unit. That was the start of the rot. We need to have young men growing up, young boys growing up with a strong male moral example, and to teach their children to love, but to have respect and to have boundaries, and the rest just follows naturally. And the other thing about it is that back in the 50s and 60s, in the poorer areas of London particularly, or big cities, they had boys' clubs, they had boxing clubs, where there was strong... look at the number of veterans that we've got, that we could set up young men's clubs where they could have a strong male figure to look up to give them some focus, and it would take them away from the gangs and into something. If it's a financial constraint that says, well, we can't actually afford this, well, we can't afford not to, can we?
Yeah, absolutely. Damn right, yeah. Absolutely. That is such wisdom. Now, a group of Reform UK branch officers have this evening written a letter of resignation to the party chairman, Zia Youssef. The group are in Chester North. They've cited a lack of party infrastructure and the treatment of Rupert Lowe amongst their reasons for quitting. Panel, we're trying to pull up some guests on this. We're having a bit of a technical issue with it at the moment. Christo, is this all going to blow over for Reform? They must have known it was going to be a tough couple of weeks when they took the whip away from Rupert Lowe. Were they right to do so anyway?
I think that they are... Last week on this programme, I said they're in real danger of, by looking like it was a retaliation against Rupert Lowe for the comments he'd made about Nigel Farage. I thought that the whole selling point of Reform, the way they could have actually spun that if they'd wanted to, was, well, look, we can take a bit of criticism. We're different. You can have a difference of opinion in our party. We're not the same. So I think they dropped the ball on that. And the letter is so scathing on that point. Patriotic members across the UK place their faith in Reform UK to differ from other parties to usher in a new era of governance. There's no difference between this party and the rest, willing to compromise anything for power for power's sake, not the good of the people. Those are such scathing words in this letter, so I think they need to be really careful if they want to be the alternative that allows differences of opinion, that they actually stick by that.
Well, let's talk to a Reform UK councillor from Elmbridge, Harrison Almay-Varty. Good evening, Harrison. You just heard Christo there read out a bit of the letter from these Reform campaigners, basically workers who have handed in their resignation this evening. Defend your party, if you will, my friend.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would sit and claim that it's been an easy week for Reform, but then again, it was never going to be. Over the next 4 years, it was never going to be that all the way. It's peaks and troughs, but the overall trend is positive. I think part of this has been slightly blown out of proportion. At the end of the day, these are 5 members out of 220,000. Reform have AGMs coming up in June, where people can actually elect officials like chairmen, like treasurers, and those type of roles. So I believe in this instance they were interim, so it doesn't really carry the same type of weight as a traditional kind of chairman anyway. So I would say, look, of course, things don't always go right, but the overall picture here, in my opinion, is one that is moving in a positive direction. And I think most people are concerned really about how Reform can help them rather than internal, disagreements. And that isn't limited to Reform. I mean, I was part of the Conservative Party, and I'm sure Miriam will be able to agree. You could set up a whole news channel alone just to go over the amount of stuff that goes in the Conservative Party. I think this past week is the calmest week it's ever been compared to the Conservatives. So I think it's been blown out of proportion a little bit. I don't think anybody promised it would be smooth sailing over the next 4 years. It will be hard graft, but I think most people just care about how Reform helped them, and I think that's cutting through, hence why we're doing so well in the polls.
Harrison, you're quite fascinating, aren't you? Harrison Almay-Varty, how old are you? Shouldn't you be in bed by now? It's 10:15.
That's very ageist of you.
No, but what you demonstrate to me is that Reform are doing a remarkable job of bringing the next generation of politically engaged people through. We've got one of our audience members here, Oscar, who's pretty much run the show this evening. He's got his eye on my seat and possibly on your seat in the future. Are you typical of Reform members at the moment?
Do you know, it's not just age. I've been to plenty of Tory branch meetings, Tory conferences, and I've been to, these past few months, Reform branch meetings and other events. And not only is it younger based, but it's a real spread of people from all different backgrounds. So from wealthy, those from lower income, and those from different ethnic backgrounds. And the Conservatives have a very solid base, and it's generally older, generally typical wealthier individuals. So I would say I feel it's less as a badge of honour in Reform, because there are more of me in Reform. I think that's a great thing.
Yeah. Oscar in our audience wants to ask you a question. Harrison, go on, Oscar.
Don't you think it would be better for them to make up, considering the Tories could seize this opportunity by getting rid of Badenoch and appointing Jenrick, then there would be a split in support? Because at the moment, it's good for Reform that Badenoch is in position, because Badenoch makes Starmer look good. And how hard is that?
I think that's quite unlikely. A good question. I think that's quite unlikely. I think what we've seen is, in the past few months, lots of Tory members, like myself, I voted for Jenrick, have left. And they've joined Reform. And I think if they were to have a leadership election, a lot of the previous right-wing Conservatives that have now kind of joined Reform haven't got the same pull that they did in the last leadership election. So my inclination is Kemi Badenoch won't really last that year. I'll be honest, she's not performing particularly well at PMQs, and I think they're most likely to install, more of a centrist kind of individual, because they're struggling to outflank Reform.
OK, fantastic. Stay there, Harrison. Miriam, your response to that Kemi Badenoch may not last the year?
Oh, well, I mean, I have no idea. And if the last 10 years are anything to go by, anything could happen. But I do think that is a good point, though, that the longer time goes on and the more support Reform gets by actual Conservatives leading the Conservative Party, it does mean that were there to be a future leadership election, there probably would be a centrist elected rather than a right-winger. And, of course, that's, pours oil on the fire of the Conservative identity crisis, which is, are we Conservatives or are we Liberals, which, of course, is exactly the reason why the last government failed. But leaving that aside, Conservatives obviously have their own problem. But I mean, we don't know yet how this will play out for Reform. Will it be disastrous? Will it just be a minor blip? 86% of people don't know who Rupert Lowe is. But, one gets the sense that Nigel Farage has learnt from what's happened in the Conservative Party, and he does want control, not necessarily for reasons of ego, but because he's seen what happens if you have many, many cooks. And you can have democracy or you can have control, but you can't have both.
OK, is Harrison still with us? Have we lost him? He's probably gone to bed. Oh, you are still there? OK, good, Harrison. Don't forget to clean your teeth, by the way. No. Harrison.
Is that your normal pickup line for young men?
He's a bit young. But Harrison, what do you think will happen in the next few years? I mean, there's all this talk all the time. Will Reform have to do a deal with the Conservatives up to the next election? Is it too early to say? Are you very open-minded about that possibility?
I don't think they'll need to. I think if they continue on this trajectory, and there's every reason why they should be able to, that they won't need to. It's like, Blockbuster in its final days going to Netflix. Actually, yeah, we'll work with you. I don't think it particularly works like that. Potentially it could if Conservatives were pure in that sense. I've had an internal view into see that a lot of Conservatives simply just don't share Tory values. And that's the real shame, and that's really why they've fallen over themselves. Even things like with Labour, rightfully so, I think, reducing the amount spent on foreign aid, it's criticised by, individuals like James Cleverly. And it's like, we have individuals in the Tory party who just aren't Conservative, and that's why it just wouldn't, culturally it won't work. And personally, I think Reform UK is beyond spats and individuals. It is a movement, in my opinion. You speak to anybody at these branch meetings, it's not left or right. To a lot of people, it's the difference between right and wrong. And I think join as well, it's amazing.
OK, fantastic. Thank you so much. UK Councillor for Elmbridge, Harrison Barty there. Christo, impressive young man. I love it when I meet these young people going into politics, driven by belief and conviction.
I think he was at one point the youngest Conservative councillor, and then obviously he went instead to Reform. Yeah, and I think that actually it kind of mirrors Trump a little bit, doesn't it? Because we saw more younger people in the States voting for Trump than I think in history, or that had gone Republican. And I think that his line there, the feeling that people have, he had a brilliant line at the end saying it's not the difference between left and right. In people's minds, it's the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah. How does that land on your left-leaning ears, Matthew Talbot?
I remember being young and misty-eyed as well, thinking politicians were the answer. No, I think the thing with reform will be interesting. I think in all parties of reform, they've shown a lot of political naivety. First, there was the misjudged statement, which has opened the door to Rupert Lowe, pushing back and seemingly proving a lot of that statement wrong, it seems.
The misjudged statement, what do you mean by that?
Well, I just think there was a time and a place, and it just stunk quite clearly of, he's criticised Nigel, we're going to dredge up this complaint from months before and we're going to put it in the day.
Do you mean the statement from reform in response to what appeared to be the Daily Mail article and the bullying allegations?
In this letter that has...
Exactly, and I just think, Rupert's Rupert, clearly, but he's been tweeting like a heartbroken teenager for the last week, and I just think, for all the money he's got, get someone that's going to advise you a bit better, because I think, listen, they want rid of him. He won't go back. He won't be allowed back. He'll stand as an independent in his seat because he's got enough money to. I know 84% of people don't know him. 84% of people in the country might not know who Barry Gardner is, but as long as enough people in Brent West do, he'll get elected.
How dare he, Barry Gardner?
Look, I think there's a serious point that the councillor's letter made. And it's very, very easy for political parties that are new to become the focus of everybody's wish list. People project onto those parties what they would like a party to be. What the councillors were saying was, actually, there was no competence on the ground. The structure wasn't there. And that's coming from their grassroots. That's really important. Now, if reform is going to be a real credible political force, it has to have that structure on the ground. It has to be able to deliver on the ground in that way. And I think it's telling that, we talked earlier about how you can either keep control, but if you keep control, you've got to make sure that actually things are working down at grassroots level. Yeah. And I think what this whole spat has shown is there's a mismatch there.
And the problem is the Reform as a new nascent party is driven by people with principles. The good thing about people with principles is they have them. The bad thing is they've got principles, so they're quite easily upset.
They may have principles, but that doesn't actually mean they're any more united than the Conservative Party are. I mean, we know what they think about immigration, although actually part of this split is about how, hawkish to be on immigration. But we don't really know what they think about the economy. They were completely split on assisted suicide, for example, so a social Conservative issue. I don't think it's yet clear what the vision of reform is. And I think what was so disappointing about this row is that they started to weaponise the Equality Act. And that's the one thing that they have stood against, this ridiculousness of suing people for discrimination and using the law to fight each other. That's exactly what they've done, and that's what I find so disappointing about it. Have this fight behind closed doors, take it like a man, don't report someone to the police for offence. That's the one thing they're supposed to stand against, and I think that's very disappointing.
OK, all right, thank you so much. Now, after the break, a couple found an illegal migrant in their camper van. What do you think happened next? Don't go anywhere.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Basically, we know the people behind Bond are the Broccoli family.
And for the last 30 years, Cubby Broccoli's daughter, Barbara, and her half-brother, Michael G. Wilson, have been looking after the franchise and done very well with it. When you think of what a great Bond Daniel Craig was.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't had a new movie for 4 years, and now it looks like Amazon are going to take over the helm, and apparently relations are strained between Barbara and Stephen and Amazon, which to me sounds like they've, even though it's their baby, they've been pushed aside. So they've decided to step back. So now this new guy, Jeff Bezos from Amazon, is asking you who you would like to be the next 007. One name in the papers is Tom Cruise. But he's American. But well,
this is what worries me about Amazon having it, though. It's going to become really Americanised.
Yeah, or very, very woke. I mean, are we going to have a woman playing James Bond?
I don't know if Jeff Bezos is that woke, is he?
Well, no, but Amazon are quite woke, aren't
they? No, they were woke when it was trendy to be woke, and now that we've got Trump in the White House, then they're not going to be woke at all. I mean, it's the Americanisation I worry about, and I do know somebody else who was in for it, who is Ian Fleming's great nephew, who would have kept it in Britain, right?
It should be kept in Britain,
and it's the Broccolis. They were American. Oh, she is American. But, I mean, they were based in Britain. And we want it to stay British.
They'll keep it at Pinewood. We're out of time.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Tonight with me, Bev Turner, and my fabulous panel. Now, we spoke to him in the last hour. Our very own Dougie Beattie. He's in Benidorm. Why? Because it was cheaper to go to Benidorm to watch the Cheltenham races than it was to go to Cheltenham and watch them. Here he is. Evening, Dougie. How's it going? It looked like it had been raining earlier in Benidorm. Has it been raining there?
Buenos noches, Bev. Yes, it had been raining all day today, actually. So it was good for the cheap drink, and it was good to see the big screens with all the racing on it and a lot of betting going on, but it wasn't good for the weather. So what happened was most people ended up inside the bars all day, and I have no guests with me this time because, it's now nearly 11:30 at night here in Benidorm, and you can see behind me it is still packed, absolutely packed, rammed with the Brits. They are here in force, and a lot of them are worse for wear at this time. I mean, we have been surrounded by people wondering just what we are doing and want to know, can they appear on TV? But no, not a good idea at this time of the night.
A little bit too risky, Dougie, at this time of the night. Is it a bit high risk to put them in front of a camera?
Oh, yeah, Ofcom would be all over me. I would have no job in the morning, P45.
Listen, the betting
there is no doubt on that.
Betting on the horses is such a big part of that race course culture, right? So presumably everyone's been doing their betting there on their phones, have they?
Oh, here we go, here we go. Hello. I'm good. I'm good.
We're all good.
Oh, yeah. How long have you been drinking today?
Since 2 o'clock this morning at the airport.
2 o'clock in the airport, yeah. You appreciate the cheap drink, don't you?
Oh, we absolutely do. It's not that we're cheap in Benidorm, though.
Did you win any money on the horses?
Did we, fuck?
Oh, there it is. Sorry about that.
I'm apologising.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for that. He said, did you win any money on the horses? You said, no, I didn't actually, sir.
Yeah. I've been in war zones and everything, Bev, and this is riskier than any of that, I can assure you.
Oh, Dougie, fantastic. Thank you so much. You see, your instincts as a broadcaster were right. Don't talk to the people. But they came to you. They left you with no choice. Listen, it's British culture. It's what we do, right? We do some things very well. That is one of them. Dougie Beattie, right, take care out there. Don't go chasing those ladies now. Is that your idea of a good night out, Christo?
Like drinking from 2 a.m. when I get, yeah, that's my idea of a normal day. we are a rip-off, though. We're an absolute rip-off. I could see why people would go over there. People will be unsurprised in this room to hear I'm a Madonna fan. Yeah. And I know, amazing. And but I flew to Amsterdam to see her because it was actually cheaper to do it there than going and doing it in London.
Wow,
the tickets were cheaper as well.
That's so depressing. Right, moving on. So, talking of money, a couple were fined £1,500 for unknowingly bringing an illegal migrant into the UK in their camper van. They've called for the system to be overhauled. So this is Adrian and Joanne Fenton. They were coming back from France and they discovered a 16-year-old, well, he said he was 16, hidden in the bike rack of their motorhome. They were fined for failing to check that no clandestine entrant was concealed in the vehicle. My panel are already shaking their heads. I'm going to go to them in just a moment. Let's ask Adam Brooks about this, pub landlord. Evening, Adam. So these... How you doing? Yeah, good, mate. Good to see you. So these guys, they think they stopped at the traffic lights and this kid got in the back, this young man, and then they rang the police, thought it's the right thing to do, and then they got the fine.
Look, I'm torn on this, Bev, because obviously, look, I feel sorry for them. They seem honest, genuine people. But we've got a national emergency with illegal immigration. There's over 1 million illegal immigrants in this country already. We're seeing tens of thousands cross the channel. We need a deterrent. And look, this is an honest couple, but for every honest couple, there's 4 or 5 that are going over there and bringing some back. And there's big money in that. Don't worry about that. So look, I'm split on it. The authorities need to stamp this out, and they need to show that they mean business. And they're lucky they didn't get a criminal record as well.
I'm a bit worried about you. Who's your friend? Have you been kidnapped? Just blink if you've got...
Big Marcus.
It's Big Marcus.
It's Big Marcus.
Oh, is this Big Marcus?
Yeah.
Oh, introduce me, Adam. Come on, introduce me. I've not met Big Marcus.
Marcus, this is Beth.
He's a much-loved hero.
Yeah, he's a much-loved hero. But Marcus wants to say a few words, about illegal immigration as well. He's got strong views. Marcus, what do you think on that?
Well, unfortunately, these probably was a innocent couple, but there has to be a deterrent. Because for everyone who gets caught, how many actually get through? We've got enough illegal immigration in this country anyway. So, bottom line is, it's a shame that they put them in this, but unfortunately, there must be a deterrent. Simple.
Big Marcus says there must be a deterrent, so there must be.
OK, all right, thank you so much. Big Marcus, nice to meet you. He looked quite scary, didn't he? He's the doorman, is he? That's what you need in a pub, isn't it? It's a doorman like that. Let me give you the statement from the Home Office. They said responsible persons who have fully complied with the actions laid out in the Carriers Liability Amendment Regulations of 2023 will receive a reduced penalty. The scheme is designed to target negligence rather than criminality. We would expect drivers who are actively involved in people smuggling to be investigated and prosecuted in the courts. They go on. Increased fines, new maximum penalty levels and a new penalty for failing to adequately secure a goods vehicle came into force in 2023 to prevent dangerous and illegal journeys to the UK. Where shall we start with this? Who wants to go first on this? Barry?
Well, I would say if it's a camper van, it's not a goods vehicle, is it? No. I mean, the point of our independent judicial system is that people can apply common sense, see something in context, not out of context, which is what the law was written to without that context. And it's daft. I mean, I hope they managed to recover it from him as their fare for passage, Yes. But it's just crazy, absolutely.
The trouble
crazy.
is, Miriam, mistakes like this, because it is a mistake, undermine that faith in the powers that be in this country. So the social contract feels like it's being increasingly broken.
Absolutely, and the point that this couple make in the article where they're interviewed about this is that their case will now incentivise people. If the same happened to somebody else, they found somebody that had been a stowaway that they didn't know, you wouldn't call the police now, you'd just let
just
them
say,
live
off
to
you
the
go.
service station
Yeah,
and
exactly.
drive is what they say,
Exactly.
because you would be worried about being prosecuted. So, as Barry said, you know, a sensible judge should have seen this for what it is and decided, well, of course we shouldn't prosecute these people. Because the big issue here is about illegal immigration. We've focused a lot on people coming across on boats, and of course that is a big thing. But there are absolutely still people trying to stay away. But I mean, normally, on the French side, they're very diligent. I mean, you know, I've been travelling back on ferries before. We had a big Ford Galaxy full of lots of kids and stuff, and I remember a French customs officer coming over and saying, "Can you please open your boot?" And I had to explain in schoolgirl French that we'd have to take 5 bikes off the back, so they kind of gave up.
Yeah.
But you know, you'd hope that they'd have dogs sniffing around and things like that. Obviously, that failed in this case.
Did they ask if all the children were yours?
They might have done, but my French wasn't up to it.
Did you say, yeah, you can have them? It's the end of that.
Well, there might have been some beer under the children, but anyway.
Christo, it is that contract with the state that we expect them to be able to exercise some common sense.
It's exactly that, because what's interesting as well is that this legislation is about HGV drivers and making sure that they've checked that there aren't people smuggled in the truck. And what happened was, in this case, from what I understand, they had this camper van and it was in the section on the back where the bikes are. So it wasn't actually even in the camper van that the migrant managed to mould himself into, round a bike, zip it back up, and then end up coming over. And then
And cling on at 70 miles an hour down the motorway, by the way, for several miles.
I mean, I don't know how I have trouble enough on a bike most days. I don't think I could do one that was attached to a car. So it's absolutely insane that they did the right thing. They said, right, and actually they were kind to him. They said, OK, we want to check you're all right.
Some food and a drink. And in fact, the gentleman was one of the fire officers at the Grenfell fire.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was a very senior fire officer at Grenfell.
And they felt very threatened as well, because I think they'd driven the camper van into their garage when they noticed him, so it was actually this person was in their home, but they still did the right thing, gave him water, gave him some food, called the police, and they ended up in trouble themselves. And so you're absolutely right. People would just say, well, I won't bother reporting it in future.
Yeah. Would you bother reporting it, Matt, if that happened to you?
I think you've got to, but I think that... I feel for the couple, I do. And I mean, if I was to make a defence for the Home Office, which I'm not before people start booing, I suppose for every, you know, good and proper person that's, you know, sort of somebody desperate has attached themselves to, there's a potential lorry driver, human trafficker that's taking people in for money. Because I thought, well, but they've done all the right things. They've rang the officials and all the rest of it. What's to stop somebody doing that and taking the money and then dumping them and dobbing them in anyway?
Right.
This is the problem.
We've got to get to the break. After that, we're going to take you through some of tomorrow's front pages. Don't go anywhere.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Welcome to the Winter Sun Outlook, and if you are looking for some summer-like warmth, the place to be is Greece, where a spring heatwave will bring temperatures widely into the low to mid-20s, perhaps in some spots up to the high 20s, so remarkably warm air drifting out of North Africa, but at the same time, northern parts of Italy across the Balearics as well, a lot of unsettled weather, further showers driving into Portugal, a respite into the weekend, but more unsettled weather here next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Well, this is Chris.
This is
Biggins.
the Botticelli's Venus.
Well,
right?
this gets me incensed. This is unbelievable.
Right.
Woke union chiefs.
But there we are. There's the famous
have
painting.
said that this must be taken down.
The birth of Venus.
This must not be watched. You mustn't look at this.
And there's a trigger warning.
Trigger warning.
As well, right?
Yes.
And I don't know who's put the trigger warning on this. Is it the museum where it's held, or
Some union chiefs.
Oh, right.
Woke union chiefs. I mean, this is
so.
just...
What is the offence now with that? What?
You can see her belly button.
Oh.
And a little bit of her titties. I mean, it's a beautiful painting.
Yeah, the trigger warning is that this painting may involve nudity. Well, it is a Botticelli, it is Venus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to involve nudity.
And there are lots of wonderful paintings that involve nudity. You can't suddenly say now, in 25, you can't look at these.
You'd have to shut down every art gallery in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it would be ridiculous.
We are living in 1984 now, aren't we? I mean, not literally the year, but the whole censorship thing. It's like groupthink, you must do this, you must do that. You can't have independent thought.
Yeah.
You can't look at works of art in case you start thinking the wrong way.
It's just like newsflash, classical paintings will probably have nudity in them.
Yes.
You're right. Angling, and
And compared to what you can see on Instagram.
Well, yes.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Patrick is away skiing. Now, with me this evening, delighted to say, still here, Miriam Cates, Barry Gardner, Matthew Torbett and Christopher Fufus. Sorry, Fufus.
Yeah.
Now, let's look at the front pages. Right, let's go with what the Mail are saying. They're saying Hoyle handed lobbyists pass for Commons. This is Lindsay Hoyle, was last night embroiled in a row after recruiting a former lobbyist who gave him several all-expenses-paid junkets. There's been all this attention on his expenses at the moment. Not quite sure what that's all about. The Times, $1 million to have disability benefit cut by Labour. Express are going with Dame Esther's delight at a key change. This is the assisted dying bill, of course, and she's happy that it's actually becoming easier. Very controversial. The Guardian, Prime Minister saying that Putin must not play games over ceasefire, and actress Marissa Abela, who has had a shock cancer diagnosis. The Mirror, they're talking about this convicted killer who stalked Cheryl Tweedy, Girls Aloud star, of course, and the Daily Telegraph have run an extremely unflattering photograph of Nigel Farage at Cheltenham, but saying the Reform big guns basically went head-to-head at the races, and saying, stop your games, Starmer tells Putin. Right, where do we want to start? Barry, I particularly want your opinion on that front page of The Times, which is $1 million to have disability benefit cut by Labour. Who'd have thought it?
Yeah. Look, there's people who are on long-term disability and with chronic illnesses at the moment very often do not have the confidence to go back into work because the way in which universal credit is structured means that if they do and then they find they can't cope with the work that they're doing, they go back to zero and their benefits are cut and they're sanctioned. And that's what they're afraid of. So I think any way in which we can encourage people, because I believe if you can work, you've got an obligation to society to do that. But I also think it's an opportunity to improve your situation. So it's beneficial. And many people who are on long-term sickness would dearly like to be able to do that, but they're afraid. So I think if we are to change the system to make it easier for them to take what I think everybody would say is the right choice, then great. But if that ends up then penalising people who are seriously not capable because of their sickness, because of their illness, then we really are on the wrong track in society. Because the great thing that we have in Britain is that we care for each other through the welfare state that we created.
Matthew, we have too many people on the sick, clearly. Is this the solution, though, to just cut the benefit?
No, I think you need more tailored support. I remember when I was a teenager signing on, you know, it was a tick box service. It was, you know, we didn't have career coaches as such, and maybe because we don't have careers anymore, we don't have industries, whatever. It was basically get in and get out, and it was like a sausage factory. I don't know if it's still like that today, but that's, you know, I can't imagine it's changed too much. And I think the pandemic has ruined a lot of people. A lot of people's mental health went to bits during the lockdowns, and I think we forget about that sometimes, in that people need a lot more support than what they did. I just know that I joined a Labour Party many years ago that stood against picking on the most vulnerable in society and using them as scapegoats to try and collect that little bit of cash to try and get through the next day.
It's not a little bit of cash, though. I mean, and the main problem here is that over the last few years, the principal cause of the rise in disability benefits is for people with mental health problems. Now, we can have an argument about whether this is a real rise in mental health problems or whether people are faking it or whether it's a bit of both. But the point is, the idea that you should treat physical disabilities in the same way that you treat mental health is just wrong. And we've particularly got this rise in young people, especially young men, now being on the sick for mental health, depression, anxiety, ADHD. Now, they may be genuine illnesses that need support, but not going to work and being paid by the state not to go to the work is not the right answer to those problems. And that is actually what it says in this article, that they're going to cut, and I absolutely support that. I'm not saying don't support people with poor mental health. I'm saying go to work, have a routine, take responsibility, earn some money. That will improve your mental health.
But actually,
sitting at home contemplating your own misery is a recipe.
But the state has actually...
We'll come back to it, but I do want to tell you what this bizarre footage is that we've been playing you all evening. This is anti-Trump protesters giving a new meaning to giving someone the finger. Some of you might find the gestures on this screen. They are only puppets on the hats on their heads, basically. Have a quick look at it. This is a march in Switzerland. You might find it offensive. Apologies if you do, but look away. A march... That is a march in Switzerland. Apologies if you're listening on the radio. It was directed at American President Donald Trump, featuring a brigade of flute players and drummers wearing giant hats in the shape of a hand raising a middle finger. You made a good point there, Barry.
Yeah, I mean, why are they playing Scotland the Brave?
No,
I mean, you and I recognised that, didn't we? The lady who spoke earlier from Scotland. But it's just weird.
It is very strange, isn't it? But that is Trump. What do they call it? Derangement syndrome. That he could do anything, and some people will still literally put a stupid hat on and walk down the street to make a point, Christo.
The same people that were probably absolutely horrified by the Iraq war, quite rightly, who are now thinking that he's wrong to try and get peace in Ukraine as well, because that's sort of some mind gymnastics some of those people are doing too. So, yeah, it's derangement, but also I think he loves it. He would love that. He'd love that.
Do you think so?
Yeah. I do. I think he'd love everyone talking about it.
OK. Right, yeah, publicity, a lady in the audience saying there. Now, we're going to take another quick break, but up next, Union Jackass and Greatest Britain. Stay with us.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Lots of fine weather to come as we go into this weekend, but it is still going to be chilly with some frosty nights as well. The reason why we're going to have a lot of fine weather is because high pressure is building from the west, and it's this that's going to help clear away many of the showers that we've seen through recent days. That being said, there will still be a few showers for some of us as we go overnight across some southern southeastern parts, maybe eastern parts of England as well, and also towards the far north of of Scotland, a bit of cloud and some showery rain starting to edge in. Otherwise, a lot of dry weather, some clear skies, allowing temperatures to take a bit of a dip, a bit of a frosty start for some of us, though in the far southeast, a brisk wind will stop temperatures dropping especially low here. And also across the very far north of Scotland, Shetland and later into Orkney, we are going to see a zone of cloud and outbreaks of rain pushing in, so not turning as cold here overnight. But elsewhere across much of Scotland and into Northern Ireland and Northern England, a bright start, but also a frosty one with temperatures sub-zero for many places. Slightly less chilly to start further south, but nonetheless a bit of frost is possible. And do watch out, there could be a few patches of fog or freezing fog in a few spots as well. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, and apart from 1 or 2 showers across some parts of England in particular, it's looking largely dry for most of us. Some sunshine breaking through at times as well. Worth noting though, the cloud and outbreaks of rain across the far north of Scotland will edge a bit further southwards. Temperatures for many similar to today, maybe a degree or so higher, so feeling okay in the sunshine, but in the southeast there will be a nagging breeze. After another chilly night for many of us, Saturday into Sunday. Sunday does look like it will get off to a bright start towards the southwest, but cloud towards the north-northeast will eventually make its way southwards across many places, and there will be a few spots of rain mixed in with this as well. As we go through next week, it is going to start chilly, but temperatures should gradually rise as we go through the week. Bye-bye.
To know who has caught your eye this week and who has disappointed you. Greatest Britain, Barry.
Greatest Britain, glioblastoma and rare cancers were debated today in the House of Commons because of the campaign of Dame Siobhan McDonagh. And they passed the legislation today, and we're getting real action now on those rare cancers, which have been just left for far too long, leaving people in misery and pain and family suffering. So my greatest Britain today, Dame Siobhan McDonagh.
Great.
This is one especially for Barry. My greatest Britain is Sir Keir Starmer because cutting disability benefit, migrants face human rights curbs, NHS England scrapped. It takes some courage to do things that you know your party are going to absolutely hate but are right for the country.
Who says the uni party doesn't exist, ladies and gentlemen? Christo.
OK, I've got some greatest Britons, and that is the businesses in Soho in London which are trying to survive because they're now being told by Westminster Council that they have to have quiet nights, not be open late. A jazz bar's being told it has to close at 11 o'clock, and that's because of people who have sensory problems that won't like loud noise, and because of residents that moved next door to a bar and then got confused they heard bar noise.
Right, OK. Greatest Britain for you, Matt?
John Hunt, for his courageous witness statement after losing 3 members of his family, his wife and 2 daughters, and then actually his show of defiance by returning to commentary at Cheltenham this afternoon to show that the killer will not get him down. I think he's I
think that's probably an easy one. I'm going to give it to John Hunt because you already gave him a massive clap. Unbelievable man. Well done, Matt. Yeah. Right, Union Jackass, Barry.
Right. The Sun newspaper has 2.3 million readers. Aston Villa has 62,000 people at a maximum turnout, yet Victoria Newton, the editor of The Sun, devoted today the 7 front pages of her newspaper to Aston Villa and the love affair between Prince Harry and Aston Villa.
William.
Pissing off... Prince William.
62,000.
Pissing... No, 62 was its largest this year, and it was against Liverpool, right?
Don't swear again.
No, I won't. But what it means is that 2 million of her readers were fed up that she'd spent 7 pages
Victoria,
doing
you need to say
it.
that's a royal story as opposed to a football
Nah.
story. Go on, Miriam, who's your...
Well, I've also chosen a newspaper,
62.
but I've chosen The Guardian as my Union Jackets because they are still defending lockdowns. They published a piece on Sunday saying that masks worked and we were right to lock down early and fast. Now, I don't have a problem with them writing about COVID. I think it is unfinished business. We should still be talking about it. But it's just absolutely indefensible to be claiming things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Go on then, Chris.
Sorry, it's another London one. Third week running. It's Sadiq Khan again. Because he has told us all about the success of the ultra-low emission zone based on his own figures. So I've done a survey. I'm the best broadcaster that's ever existed based on a survey of me. So I just want everyone to know that. So Sadiq again.
We've already got a winner. Mine is the American influencer Sam Jones for bizarrely and quite cruelly nicking a baby wombat from its mother.
Oh, yes.
Purely for the clicks and the likes. And causing, a lot of heartbreak for animals. And actually, Australia standing up for itself and kicking her out, actually.
Yeah, OK, I'm going to narrow it down to 2 because I'm sure I want to hear an audience response. We either go for The Guardian for their ridiculously unscientific, unenlightened, still fast asleep COVID coverage. Give us a clap. Oh, they're not bothered about that. Just me and you there, Miriam. Or Sadiq Khan.
Oh, 3 times, 3 attempts. I do. 3 attempts.
Still doing a fist pump.
No,
Not
it's
just COVID,
a
is
bit
it?
sweaty.
Oh, he's got powder on his hands.
I got powder on my hands.
Right, I've had a ball. Thank you so much. I'm sure that Patrick will be back next week if he makes it down the slopes. Now, don't forget, Ben Leo will be on GB News tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. He is going to be talking to a couple who similarly had a migrant on their camper van, so don't miss that. Tomorrow night, I'll be back on Monday morning with Britain's Newsroom at 9:30. Barry, Miriam, Christo, Matthew. Thank you so much, and thank you to all of you.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Lots of fine weather to come as we go into this weekend, but it is still going to be chilly with some frosty nights as well. The reason why we're going to have a lot of fine weather is because high pressure is building from the west, and it's this that's going to help clear away many of the showers that we've seen through recent days. That being said, there will still be a few showers for some of us as we go overnight across some southern southeastern parts, maybe eastern parts of England as well, and also towards the far north of Scotland, a bit of cloud and some showery rain starting to edge in. Otherwise, a lot of dry weather, some clear skies, allowing temperatures to take a bit of a dip, a bit of a frosty start for some of us, though in the far southeast, a brisk wind will stop temperatures dropping especially low here. And also across the very far north of Scotland, Shetland and later into Orkney, we are going to see a zone of cloud and outbreaks of rain pushing in, so not turning as cold here overnight. But elsewhere across much of Scotland and into Northern Ireland and Northern England, a bright start, but also a frosty one with temperatures sub-zero for many places. Slightly less chilly to start further south, but nonetheless a bit of frost is possible. And do watch out, there could be a few patches of fog or freezing fog in a few spots as well. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, and apart from 1 or 2 showers across some parts of England in particular, it's looking largely dry for most of us. Some sunshine breaking through at times as well. Worth noting though, the cloud and outbreaks of rain across the far north of Scotland will edge a bit further southwards. Temperatures for many similar to today, maybe a degree or so higher, so feeling okay in the sunshine, but in the southeast there will be a nagging breeze. After another chilly night for many of us, Saturday into Sunday. Sunday does look like it would get off to a bright start towards the southwest, but cloud towards the north-northeast will eventually make its way southwards across many places, and there will be a few spots of rain mixed in with this as well. As we go through next week, it is going to start chilly, but temperatures should gradually rise as we go through the week. Bye-bye.
There will be a